Hello everyone, welcome to my event recap for Rocky Mountain Gear Jam 2019 featuring the debut of Psychotic Break, my newest 3-pound Beetleweight combat robot. In this video I'm going to go through the fights and I'm going to kind of combine the event recap and the damage recap into one because there really wasn't a whole lot of damage and there weren't that many fights with Psychotic Break. So let's get straight into it and talk about the event itself. Rocky Mountain Gear Jam 2019 was held in Denver, Colorado at Elitch Gardens. Elitch Gardens, for those of you not familiar, is like a Six Flags in Denver, so it's a big amusement park kind of downtown Denver. So it's a really interesting venue. We were just kind of in, one of the pavilions or something like that, but we all had full access to the park, which was kind of fun in between fights. The event itself was pretty traditional insect class event. There was plastic ants in one arena, and then there was beetle and ant weights in the other arena, so your pretty typical insect class event. The structure was a little bit different than normal in that you had heats or groups, and so for every weight class there was like these several groups, and so I was in group C, and there was 3 bots in my group. There was Titanium Joe and Barracuda, and so it was kind of a round robin to where every bot fought every bot in their group, and then based on how all those fights went, then there was a bracket structure that was made, and then it was single elimination down from there. And this event was actually in part sponsored by myself, so I had my logo on some of the banners and things like that and on the website. So that was actually kind of interesting to see, especially walking around Elitch Gardens and seeing my face on some of these little signs and things. That was interesting. And I'll show you later, I don't have it right here, but I also have a huge sticker of my head or my logo that some of you might have seen on my Facebook channel. So in any event, let's get on to the fights. My first fight for the day was against Barracuda. So my first fight of the day of the event and the first fight ever for Psychotic Break was against a robot called Barracuda. Barracuda is this vertical spinner with a front wedge and a body in the back and some exposed wheels. And I'm not going to talk about strategy or anything because this is the very first fight that I ever had with Psychotic Break, the first time I'd really ever driven it on with the weapon. So first fight of the event and first fight for a new robot, there really isn't any strategy. It's just kind of turn it on, see if it works. So let's see how that fight went against Barracuda.
You want to keep going? You think you have him just where you want him? All right, Barracuda says no loss, no loss. Ready to count out to 10, 9, 8, 1, 0. There is the winner.
Overall, this fight went relatively well for me. It was quick. I got a good hit on the wheel. They were disabled. That's everything that you can want. I was a little bit unimpressed by Psychotic Break driving around. As always, I have my wife controlling the weapon and I'm controlling the drive. And what I think was happening is she was kind of adjusting the weapon up and down quite a bit to kind of adjust the speed so that we'd catch things like that. And I think what happens is when you're accelerating or decelerating with the weapon, it kind of wants to shift the robot around, which made driving very difficult. So for future matches, we kind of just did a more of set and forget on the weapon and only changed it when we really needed to. So I think that would help out driving, and we'll see later on in the next videos. But the driving was a little bit wonky. The weapon did what it was supposed to do, but at this point I was like, okay, we need a little bit of tweaking, need a little bit of strategy change up. So next fight of the day was against the other group mate, the other person in my group, which was against Titanium Joe. Titanium Joe is this kind of wedge-shaped egg beater titanium thing. Has a pretty sizable titanium egg beater in the front, and then it kind of wedges back a little bit. It's kind of a cool design. I think it's only done one more competition. I could be wrong, but at least here in Colorado, it's only done one other competition, and it does have some issues with that weapon in front, and I'll be really honest, I was pretty happy to go against Titanium Joe because there was just a lot of stuff to catch up front. The level of my weapon bar was just right to kind of catch that egg beater, maybe take it off, things like that. So once again, no strategy, just kind of drive around, see how the weapon feels, get the weapon up to speed, and point towards and see what happens. So let's see the fight against Titanium Joe.
Robert, are you ready?
1 sec.
Momento.
Okay, now you try. Okay, good.
All right, so they got tag team driving there. One is in charge of the weapon, one is in charge of the drive. Two brains are better than one. Clockkeeper, are you ready? He is ready. Audience, are you ready? All right, don't look. If you have a cell phone, watch this one. It should be good. In 3, 2, 1. Fight, robots, fight! Both robots up to speed immediately. Going in for the hit. What's going to happen? Titanium Joe, well, I don't even know what to call that. Still going for more. The weapon is going to release her. Call it a premature release for that. Throw the toss in the wind. Casey is driving there. Robot into the weapon. Holy moly! One wheel is no longer working. Titanium Joe still coming for more. Trying to get that knockout blow. He couldn't go for that juicy motor speed controller. Oh, trying away at the piece of the not that big. Titanium Joe still not throwing the towel. Still moving up the line. He lost. Done. Tap out, tap out, tap out. Titanium Joe defeat. A good fight. What?
This fight was pretty disappointing for me. I was really hoping to get a good connection on them, rip out the weapon, and unfortunately just kind of fell off on its own, and I didn't really get a chance to do that. And once again, the drive was just kind of giving me some issues. When the weapon was up to any amount of speed, I just really couldn't point it and drive it the way I wanted to, which was interesting. And throughout this video, I'll kind of talk about some of the reasons why, but I guess, right now, since we're here, one of the big issues that I have, and I've always kind of had, is these FingerTech hubs don't really have a good way of holding the wheel in place. So I'm not really going to zoom in or anything, but if I spin this wheel, you should be able to hear the gearbox spin, and as you can hear, it's just basically spinning on the hub. And I know a lot of people do some things to correct this. I just didn't correct this ahead of time, but the wheel here is just simply spinning around the hub. Everything is fine inside, but you can get it to spin a little bit, but it's basically just kind of spinning around that hub. The clamping mechanism just isn't enough. So that's what I was having issues with, is not really translating the motor spinning to the wheels spinning. At this point in the competition, I was 2-0 and I had won my heat or group. So now it was time to move on to the actual tournament. So there was, I can't remember if it was 7 or 8, but there's 7 or 8 weights that moved on into the brackets. And my first fight in the brackets was up against Kelpie. Kelpie is made by David Small of Team Small Robotics, and it is a pneumatic flipper. And flippers are, interesting. Like, there is no knockouts, there's no push-outs in this arena, so it's not like he can throw me out of the arena. That's just not really possible. And since this design is invertible, that's really not an issue. I can't really get up on end very easily, so that's good. However, this thing getting flipped up in the air is kind of a chaos mode because of just all the amount of forces when that weapon is going. It can do some strange things, so that wasn't something I was terribly thrilled about. It is also four-wheel drive, relatively low, has a wedge, so it's kind of just hard to get to. So let's see how this fight went.
And 3, 2, 1, fight robots!
Nice, coming in with the box rush, keeps Robert from spinning up. He's getting a little momentum there. Kelpie, don't let him go. He's getting up to speed. Boom! Took that hit like a champ, though. Kelpie staying on the offensive. But he looks like... Where's he going to take the hit? He's got to get it eventually. He's going for behind.
He's going to hide on the other side.
Trying to be strategic. Sometimes... Oh, no! No! All right, we're right back up. You might want to be careful there, David. Easy. Nice! Expertly done by Kelpie.
Wow.
Looks like Kelpie was running a little low on air, so we might have to savor these last few shots. I mean, we're not even halfway done with this match yet.
Oh.
It does look like Kelpie has the drive advantage. He's got the wedge. Seems to be dominating the pushing match thus far. Going in for a pin. Gotta watch out for that floor seam, though. Don't. Don't.
Oh no! Earthquake. Try going backwards. I'll take it.
You know what? We've given everyone else a kick. Alright, after that, all my feet can take.
Oh no.
Come on, David.
Go backwards.
We're gonna have to count you out here soon. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So this was an interesting fight, and I actually learned quite a bit after this fight when I brought the bot back to the pits. And I do want to say before we get into the kind of the analysis that I realize this wasn't the best win I've ever had. I completely could have unstuck Kelpie and we could have kept going, but I knew that without a weapon and with the drive differential, my drive is not the strongest. It's not meant for that. Kelpie's drive is meant to be very good. So I knew as soon as I unstuck him, it meant I lost the match. So since this was single elimination, I took the win. I let the arena win for me, and I'm comfortable with that. I did sleep fine the night after the fight. The interesting thing that happened here is exactly what I said. Kelpie got a good flip underneath of me. The bot just kind of went into this crazy spiral, and somehow, I don't really know how, but somehow the weapon blade actually came into contact with the frame. Now that means that the weapon blade, which is AR-500, it's 3/16 thick AR-500, bent enough or flexed enough that it actually clipped into the frame. And it has to bend like about 1/2 inch to do that because it didn't hit the frame that was closest to it, it hit the one that was furthest away. So when it flipped up in the air, that weapon was kind of undulating like this, came around and actually clipped into the frame. I have some pictures that I'll probably be showing here. Clipped into the frame, didn't really do any significant damage, but did enough, and then also clipped the belt in the process. And you might be kind of asking yourself, why am I not showing those damage pictures here? Well, the reason is because I actually signed that piece of the frame and gave that to David Small. So he is actually now the owner of that part of the frame from that fight. So I don't really have that. And more spoilers on that, you might be asking yourself, well, where is the weapon? Well, keep watching. But in any event, that was an interesting fight. I learned a lot about the belt. In the very beginning, we had actually tensioned the belt tighter, and that is some of the startup issues that you have. Psychotic Break has enough torque and enough power in the weapon that I can just literally flick the stick all the way to 100%, and in about 3 seconds, it's at full speed, and it has enough torque that it should be able to push robots away. That wasn't happening because I think it was going into a current override mode or something like that. The belt was way too tight. We ended up adjusting it for the next match, but my wife was having issues to where when she would increase the speed on the weapon and it would stop, she'd have to go all the way back down to full, wait for a second, and then go back. So there was definitely some protection going on there, and that's why we weren't able to get up to speed instantly. It didn't end up being the primary issue that we had. It would have been nice if we had gotten up to speed quicker, but it was really the something flexing. I really don't think this frame is flexing at all. It is extremely strong. I did play a little bit with the weapon, and the weapon can actually bend a little bit. And in theory, there is enough bend in that weapon that it can just barely clip the frame. It was very hard to do by hand, but you know, the physics here are very interesting. So that was it was a sloppy win, but it was a win, and that meant I moved on. After my win, I really didn't do anything. The frame was fine. I actually ended up using the frame for the whole rest of the competition because just some of the little structure here was chipped off, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. I don't think it was compromised in any way. So I really just replaced the belt and charged the battery and kept going. My next fight was against Isaac Mailer's 3-pound, which is Red Die number 5. Red Die number 5 is kind of a Bite Force clone. I don't think he would be upset with me saying that, but it's definitely a low-slung, 4-wheel drive vertical spinner that has a lot of different front attachments, this being one of them. He has wedgelets, he has a wedge, he has a couple different things that he can put on the front, and I believe he came in second place at the last competition here in Colorado, so, you know, pretty good competition. My plan going into that was to adjust the belt tension, get a better spin-up time since I knew that he could probably box rush me and stop the weapon from spinning up. So I needed to fix the spin-up, and I also needed to figure out something with the wheels and the traction. I probably should have done a little bit more than I did, but I ended up using carpet tape around the outside of the wheels, and carpet tape is insanely sticky. It's what I use for the fixtures on my CNC machine. So by wrapping a little bit of carpet tape around the outside of the wheels and just kind of rubbing it on some of the grit and the grime on the arena floor, it takes down the tackiness a little bit. If you don't do that, it's actually too tacky to even move. You might even strip out your gearboxes. It's just way too tacky. So I did that to help out with the traction a little bit, and so that was a strategy, just get up to speed. I was hoping to hit that vertical weapon in the front, hit the wedge, so let's see how that went.
Fight! Psychotic Break, one more time to get that weapon up to speed. It's got a lot of good opportunity, but get that number 5 does not take it. He's playing with
That's karma.
Normally I'd be disappointed, but
and we got a knockout.
Unfortunately, that ended up being a pretty quick fight. Pretty much the same thing happened again. I'm still not sure for this fight what was happening with the weapon getting up to speed, but it just still wasn't responding. It's amazing that you spend so much time planning and thinking and testing everything. I had tested the weapon system here in the garage countless times. I mean, you guys all saw it through my videos, and I had never had an issue with it spinning up in the beginning. And even here when I was in the test box that I have in the garage, I was just giving it to full, pulling it all the way down. I went through like 3 batteries once, just from a standstill all the way up to full, back down, all the way up to full, back down, swap out the battery, try it again. So I'm not really sure what was going on here. So I gotta definitely double check that. But unfortunately, that's just what ended up happening. I didn't get up to speed fast enough, and then when I did finally get up to speed, Isaac pushed me into the wall, and when I went into the wall, you know, everything just kind of flexed a little bit again, caught the belt, and then caught up on the edge of the arena, and that was that. So unfortunately, this meant I was out of the competition, but I did have an additional grudge match. For those of you that are familiar with all the little parts and bits up here, you're probably seeing Wumbo's wheel. So yes, I did end up doing a grudge match with Wumbo. There was no strategy. I was just trying to figure out what exactly I needed to do to kind of fix Psychotic Break and get it working again. So I once again adjusted the belt tension and just kind of went in and tweaked things a little bit just to make sure everything was working the way I wanted it to. And then I went and fought Wumbo. So let's see how that bonus fight went.
We're ready.
All right, and we're ready in 3, 2, 1, fight, robots! Come together, nice hit, good sparks. That blade on that brick is just so sharp. I think that's the most damage I've seen the Wumbo in a long time. Or a good chunk out of him. This can actually be a really good fight for Psychotic Break, because he is just good solid hits on those heels of Wumbo. Good engagement. I'm not hearing the blade on Wumbo moving anymore. Is he being incapacitated? Ooh! Another brutal hit.
Yeah!
Psychotic Break is still moving, but ooh, looks like we're going out of balance now. He's drinking a little too much coffee, jittering around. But Wumbo is still moving, but it looks like one of the wheels has stopped spinning, which is impressive because the wheels are belt driven, so they just slip before the break. But there might be some parts that are, Psychotic Break pulls its signature belt break move, having a breakdown, as is its namesake. Both of these robots are now hobbling towards each other. This could be a long minute and a half left.
Come here!
I'm not sure who I would call it for at this point. I mean, Psychotic Break was moving until it slit its own throat.
My wheels don't have gouges in them.
I see a little more damage on Wumbo, I think. But at this point, I mean, both these robots are just kind of flailing about.
How much time do we have?
I might just call
1 minute, 8
this,
seconds. Oh,
I'm putting it down for now, Wumbo, because you were incapacitated sooner. So yeah, we're calling out Wumbo in 3, 2, 1. Match over for Psychotic Break. We call that a knockout.
I was pretty pleased with the fight against Wumbo. Things seemed to be working more the way that I was hoping they would have worked initially. As you can see from the very beginning of the match, the weapon had no problem getting up to speed. It had a ton of power, and it stayed working throughout the match. Now, towards the end of the match, two bad things happened. The first bad thing that happened was, if you look, I don't know, 3/4 of the way through the fight, something like that, after I hit the wall and the weapon started spinning up, there was a lot of vibration. Well, it turns out that AR-500 is not my favorite weapon material, especially not 3/16 inch thick AR-500. When I hit against the wall, it actually bent the whole weapon. That caused it to be off balance. That off balance ended up eating the belt once again, but probably for a very different reason. I didn't come into contact with the frame, it was just wobbling around so much that it ended up disintegrating the belt. So that's what happened, and that was a hit against the wall. You can kind of maybe see the slow motion here, but I just kind of slammed against the wall, and that's what bent the weapon. And it bent the weapon pretty significantly, so much so that it just really wasn't salvageable or fixable. I do have a backup, so I'll use that for future fights or maybe make something else. But the weapon ended up getting signed and going to Jeff of Wumbo, so he actually has that weapon now. In addition to that, the other thing that happened is I ended up crab walking, and I took this pod apart, and I noticed that one of the wires on the drive motor had just separated out from the connector. So all that vibration, all that hitting, the wire just kind of ended up snapping off. So in the future, I'm going to do something a little bit better with the wire management inside, just so there's no stress on that wire. But yeah, just one of the wires came off, so that's why I was crab walking like that. So overall, not too bad. You know, I'm not really all that thrilled with the performance of Psychotic Break. I was hoping for a little bit better, but that last fight against Wumbo gave me a little bit of hope. So I think I need to do a couple things. I think I need to do something with the belt to either contain it, stop it from me hitting myself with the belt, maybe change out to a different belt. I was talking with Jeff a little bit. He uses round O-ring pulley belts because they do stretch and they can kind of get out of the way. I'm a little worried about that getting wrapped up in the weapon, so we'll see. I got to do something different about the belt for sure. Probably going to do something with the weapon blade. I don't think AR500 is right for me. I think it's just way too flexible for the type of designs that I do. So I actually might go with a titanium, or I might just go back to an S7 weapon. I think that might be the best. And then in terms of the drive, I think I'm going to ditch the FingerTech and make my own custom solution or something, who knows. But this just doesn't work. This just isn't gonna work out for me. So I gotta change that up. But other than that, throughout the whole competition, I think I only damaged, other than the frame and the weapon, I really didn't damage any internals. I didn't have to swap out any internals. All the internals were perfectly fine. I just swapped batteries. So that was good. I think everything in here is pretty well protected. Isaac did get one pretty good hit on the back, and it just kind of separated a couple layers on the plastic, but that's really it. So other than that, I think the bot is durable enough. I think it could be powerful enough. I just need to make a couple little tweaks on it. As promised, here is the extra large Roberts Cowan logo. I didn't know that they were actually printing these, so when I showed up at the venue and saw these, of course I knew I had to take one home. There's 3 of these. I think one of them maybe stayed with the event, and I think Jeff from Wumbo has the other one out in Vegas, so that's pretty cool. So this will make its way up into the shop somewhere. So as always, thanks for watching. Hopefully that gives you a better idea of how, you know, Psychotic Break went, and how some of the decisions ended up in a combat setting. It definitely needs a few tweaks. This bot kind of changed over the course of it. If you look back at the intro video, the very first video that I posted about this, my goal was to win the event and, you know, make something that was really awesome, and it just kind of went off the rails and went a different path than that. I ended up just wanting to create something that was pretty and something that was a little fancier, and trying out some new techniques. You know, I really like the idea of this sandwiched inside of there, this kind of exoskeleton frame. You know, a lot of times when I design these robots, I just kind of end up not caring so much about perfect form over function, but just, you know, I want to try something out. I wanted to make some kind of skeletal frame, and so I had more fun building this robot than I think I did competing with it, and maybe with a few tweaks it can be more competitive. I don't know if this is ever going to be just that, bring it to an event, clean up, win first place. I don't think it's ever really going to get there, but it is a fun robot. It is powerful, it is somewhat reliable, so I think eventually this will be a good robot to compete with, but I'll probably move on to another design at some point. So overall, you know, my thought of Psychotic Break as a robot is probably like an 8 out of 10 maybe. I really like it, I really enjoy it. This will probably end up on my wall out here in the shop at some point, but it is not the most fun thing to compete with, just because of some of the drive issues and the fact that it's always losing the weapon belt, things like that. So we'll see how I feel once I kind of tweak it and get it working right. Maybe it'll end up being really good, but I don't know. So as always, thanks for watching. I probably have a couple more videos to release on Psychotic Break. I really haven't talked about any of the BL Heli stuff. I haven't talked about how I machined this frame. I definitely have a video for that coming out. And there's probably another little video here and there that I will be releasing for Psychotic Break before I kind of put that to bed. So be sure to check me out on Facebook, check out all the links down below, and I'll see you again in my next video. Thanks for watching.